we are in the house of Mr. Holger Strohm, the international expert of the atomic energy, who has many things reported about this energy.
Yes, nuclear power is the most dangerous technology we have got. This is because if a reactor is 3 to 6 years in operation, a lot of radioactivity will be accumulated, equivalent to the detonation of roughly 6 to 8,000 Hiroshima bombs. An extreme amount of radioactivity which can't be controlled. We have now the reactor accident in Japan. Politicians and experts have told us this can never happen. But it happens, as we see. And now we see that we are badly informed. A lot of lies are told, and the experts and media say this has no consequences on the population, for instance in Europe or the United States. This is a lie, because in the reactor block number 3 contains over a ton of plutonium. And plutonium is a very dangerous substance. It's not possible to control it, because it reacts with air and water and oxidizes and just flies away in the air. It goes around the Earth ball, it connects with the raindrops, it's raining down, it's falling down, and then we inhale it, or we eat it, or we drink it. And my good friend, Professor Dr. John Goffman, he was the director of the Atomic Energy Commission and responsible for the plutonium research, together with his colleague Arthur Templin. He stated that 1 billion part of plutonium is sufficient enough to produce 100% cancer. And in Japan is over a ton of this dangerous substance. So this is really dangerous. Particular, plutonium has a half-time of roughly 25,000 years. And if a human inhales it and he gets lung cancer, after that his corpse will be burned or buried, and this tiny little plutonium part comes back into the air, or with plants over the roots comes on the surface of the earth, and it will be inhaled or eaten for another time. So a tiny little part is sufficient enough for the next 100,000 of years to produce new sacrifices again and again. Another thing is, we are being told that the reactor catastrophe in Chernobyl is so much more dangerous. This is another lie, because Chernobyl was a weapon reactor. It was produced pure weapon plutonium, and Chernobyl was a special construction where it was possible to exchange the fuel rods during the operation of the reactor. So the fuel rods just contained a week to 4 weeks in the reactor in order to produce pure weapon plutonium. If the fuel rods are too long in the reactor, other isotopes are produced, for instance plutonium-240, 241, 242, and 240 and 242 are not able to split. These are isotopes, impurities. Therefore, the fuel rods were just for a short time in the reactor because it's very hard to separate these different isotopes. You have to put it in centrifuges, but even then it's very, very complicated. So with other words, there was hardly any radioactivity in the Chernobyl reactor. And through the graphite, which burned, it got pushed up kilometers into the air, and there were strong winds who were distributing it around the world. In our Western reactors, so the reactors from Westinghouse and General Electric, this is not the case. If we have a core meltdown there, the radioactivity will get released, goes up some 100 yards, and then it cools down, comes down to the earth, and the wind will push it over the surface in a deadly cloud. Millions of people will die. And as we know, such reactor accidents are possible. We see that Obama, who was once a great hope of mine and of many people, has declared that nuclear power is an ecological power, a clean power, which is saving the climate. This, of course, is not the truth. You can see all nuclear power plants are built on rivers. Why? Because all the heat goes into the rivers. Then you have to mine the uranium, and you have to grind the granite. You have to refine it and reprocess it. And for this you need large amount of energies produced by very often by coal power plants. Then you have to install all the equipment, the nuclear power plant, etc. For all of this you need large amounts of energy, which very often emit carbon dioxides. In Holland, research agencies have made some reports where they said that a clean coal power plant is emitting the same amount of carbon dioxide as a modern nuclear power plant. So this is no solution for climate changes. Nuclear energy is not controllable, and it's extremely dangerous. Just one reactor accident is sufficient enough to destroy a country. We will see now in Japan, where the radioactivity, at least the large amount, got blown by the wind onto the Pacific, that this will have extreme consequences for the Japanese population. Many of them will die. In the past, as when I was young, we hardly knew cancer. Only old people got sick and died on cancer. Young people, this was not known. Now half of the population develop cancer, and a third of the population dies. In the future, we all will get cancer, and half of the population will probably die. But this is not the only thing. It's always claimed low-level radioactivity is not dangerous. It's harmless. It's stimulating the immune system. It's healthy. This is a lie, as the directors of the Office of Standards Development of the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Mr. Robert Minogue and Carl Goller, claimed already 1978. They said that the threshold limit is not harmless, that each radioactivity, as small as it is, claims sacrifices, will cause cancer, will cause genetical damage. I've got here a book from Mohammed Maraki, who has written this book as a consequences because the Western countries are using uranium ammunition in Afghan, in Iraq, in Somalia, in Yugoslavia, etc., where they shot uranium, the waste, and they polluted large areas. In certain areas there are no healthy children born any longer. They are all deformed in extreme amounts. We can see another picture here. Sometimes the babies are no babies any longer. They are just totally deformed. And this is what will happen in Japan too. More and more babies will be deformed. More and more people will get sick. And we will eat and inhale the radioactivity for many thousand years. The whole thing is extremely dangerous and a criminal act. I have got here two arguments from, for instance, Professor Dr. Vladimir Chernozenko. He was a scientific director of the cleaning work in Chernobyl. He says, in the future the consequences of atomic energy will be disastrous. The horrors of a Mr. Stalin and Hitler will completely fade away against this. Another one is from Professor Dr. Johannes Ude. He is a professor for Catholic moral theology, and he was a close friend to Albert Schweitzer. He says the use of nuclear power is a crime on all people, and criminals are those who are building reactors, promoting them and defending them, who are spreading the lies that nuclear power is harmless. Nuclear power is a crime and a technology we can't control. And particular, what I'm worried about is that we are doing this to our own children. We are extincting our children and children's children, and they can't defend themselves. This is an extreme crime, and I'm very unhappy about this. And the only thing I can do is just to apologize at these children for what we are doing to them. This is diabolic. This is the biggest crime man can do. It's awful and it's a horror. I pledge to everybody, stop this insanity. Let us stop nuclear power before it's too late.
Since 1970, you have written many books about the atomic energy dangers. In Germany, you have sold about 300,000 books named Peaceful into the Catastrophe. And TV, newspapers and so on have made a boycott on your writings.
I have written 80 books. 40 were censored right away. But some of these people I was able to distribute. This, for instance, Peaceful into the Nuclear Catastrophe, 1,300 pages and 4,000 literature sources have been sent by registered mail to 4,000 politicians, scientists, and people who have a high influence on their society. And parallel, we have printed commercials in all large papers in Germany where we attack ministers. For instance, what is going to be happen in a case of nuclear accident? That you can't do nothing. If these people are contaminated, you can't even let them out of the catastrophe area. You have to force them to stay in there because they are radiating. We can't help them. It's not possible. We can't even evacuate them. If a nuclear power plant goes up, it's so quick. It can happen within a few hours, and then this extreme amount of radioactivity is blown by the wind to large cities, is destroying countries, and nothing can be done. We know the case of McCluskey. This was an American worker. He was contaminated by only one substance, not by 1,200 substances, isotopes get produced in a nuclear power plant. Only one, americium. He was in a lead bed who weighed tons, and then he was a crane. They pushed him up and down from the ceiling, and a half dozens of physicians operated him with fallout costumes, and they had little steel arms, and they were looking through lead glasses in order to operate him. And after that, McCluskey had to stay 8 months in this room. The air had to be filtered, and his extremities had to go out, was a band because nobody could come in, and had to be buried in lead coffins. This shows that a treatment of highly contaminated persons is not possible. In Europe we don't have beds like this, they exist only in America. Then they say you have to exchange the blood, you have to exchange the bone marrow, etc., etc., etc. This is just not possible, because the physicians will be sick too. They will vomiting blood, they have blood diarrhea, everything inside is inflamed, are sores, and these people suffer under extreme pain. It's a very cruel death, being contaminated by radioactivity. And since 41 years I'm active to try avoid tragedies like this. Today I'm under total censorship. In Germany I can't publish any books any longer. The press and the media will not talk to me. It's an extreme censorship, and it's not only in Germany. This book, Censor USA, by Christina Borgensen, there are a dozen of journalists in it, very high decorated journalists, and they could not imagine that there is censorship in the Western countries, in America, in Europe, etc. But then, when they tried to write about certain subjects, like about large companies polluting the environment, or the dirty work the secret services are doing, they got fired. They had court cases, their lives were threatened, etc., in order to silence them. We don't have a free press. And these journalists say there is hardly any difference between Nazi Germany and the so-called Western democracy, except one thing: the methods have been more refined. No wonder. The SS officers and the Nazis, who were really skilled, were then being sent to the United States and other countries, and they taught the secret services how to act. And even here in Germany, from the communist country East Germany, the Stasi, the secret service, has been integrated in the secret services now. All these so-called skilled people are now governing us. They are refining these methods more and more in order to control us, to suppress informations which are not wanted. All this destroys democracy and our living quality and our existence. There is only one thing we can do against it. To demonstrate is not enough. We have to inform ourselves. We have to read. We must approach a higher education level, because only then changes to the goods are possible in the long run. If we only demonstrate if a nuclear reactor blows up, this is a short-term thing. Within a half year we have forgotten everything, and then everything is repeating over and over again. If we want to defend our lives, we have to become smarter. We have to become more human, and we have to defend ourselves and not let politicians or industry do this.
And now you are working on a documentation, a movie film on the dangers of the nuclear power.
Yes, most people are not able to read any long and thick books like this, so we are going with time and we're producing a movie film. For this we have interviewed Germany's scientists who are experts on this field, but politicians as well as environmental citizen groups. For instance, Greenpeace is involved too, and this will go, of course, a little further and covers all the dangers of nuclear power, even that of the waste. One extremely dangerous thing and stupid thing is the uranium ammunition, where we shoot the waste or uranium either from reprocessing or from enriching with weapons. We now around 100,000 tons are shot. They vaporize with high temperatures, and then little tiny nanoparticles are flown away and are creating cancer and deformed babies. A friend of mine, Frieda Wagner, has made this film, Deadly Dust. And this film has got many prizes. The Grimme Prize in silver and gold, the European Television Prize, etc. But after that, he didn't get any job any longer. And a dozen of journalists who were writing about this subject don't get a job either any longer, because censorship is used for this. This is extremely dangerous, because the uranium which is used has a half-life of billions of years. And it gets flown by the wind to many countries. And people will inhale it, they will drink the polluted water, they will eat food which is contaminated, and more people will die. Because these particles don't stay in the Iraq or Afghanistan, they will go to other countries, Turkey. Or we can see how the sand in the desert of the Sahara gets flown to the south of Germany or goes over to South America. And these particles will take the same way. That means that we will kill people. They will develop cancer. They will get deformed babies. This is another crime which is systematically silenced down by censorship in the United States and in Europe and other countries. Another crime we have to stop. This is diabolic. This is the biggest sin man can do.
Will you show some photos from this book?
I did it already before.
Okay.
It's the same pictures. And it doesn't matter if a particle, a radioactive particle, has been caused by weapon industry or the civil nuclear power industry. Radiation is radiation and extremely dangerous.